to an outcome that involves removing the tariffs very soon. Everything is on the table, but when we're talking about sort of non-tariff retaliation, it could be about restricting supply. It could be putting our own export duties on products. It could be energy and minerals. It could be broader than that, but certainly, the strategic nature, particularly of critical minerals, makes it one of the more obvious targets, because the alternative for the United States to actually get it is from China. There's a certain amount that you can ship by rail, but by and large, you couldn't displace the 4 million barrels that we send to the United States in pipelines. But I would say it works on the other side of the bucket too. So the refineries in the Midwest and in the Gulf Coast are set up to use heavy crude. The United States doesn't produce much heavy crude. It's mainly light sweet crude. And so in order to displace Canadian crude from those refineries, you would basically have to retrofit them all, which would be tens of billions of dollars and probably 5 to 10 years of work. So I actually think the oil that's coming down here is pretty sticky, in the sense that I don't think it's displaceable. And so in that regard, I don't think the threat to Canada's producers in the oil sector is as significant as perhaps in other sectors.
Oil has always been more than a commodity between Canada and the United States. It is a strategic link that binds economies, infrastructure, and daily life across the border. Millions of barrels move every day through pipelines, rail lines, refineries, and terminals that were built over decades of cooperation. For most consumers, this system is invisible until something disrupts it. That disruption came suddenly. When tensions between Canada and the United States escalated over trade and policy disputes, energy markets took notice. Canada, the largest foreign supplier of crude oil to the United States, occupies a unique position in North American energy security. Any shift in that relationship sends immediate signals through fuel markets, supply chains, and regional infrastructure. The phrase oil retaliation began circulating after Canadian officials signaled potential countermeasures in response to U.S. actions that affected Canadian exports. While Canada did not shut off oil entirely, even modest policy changes, regulatory delays, or redirected flows were enough to create ripple effects across the U.S. energy system. Oil supply is not as flexible as it appears. Refineries are designed to process specific types of crude. Pipelines follow fixed routes. Storage capacity is finite. When disruptions occur, whether from weather, maintenance, labor disputes, or political tension, the impact can concentrate quickly in certain regions. This is especially true in states that rely heavily on Canadian crude and refined products. Within days of the escalation, reports emerged of fuel shortages at gas stations in several U.S. states. These were not nationwide outages, but localized disruptions that highlighted how tightly balanced the system had become. Stations ran low or temporarily out of fuel, delivery schedules slipped, and prices spiked. The affected states shared common traits. Many were located in the Midwest and northern regions where Canadian oil plays a critical role. Refineries in these areas are deeply integrated with Canadian supply, and alternative sources are neither immediate nor cheap. Drivers noticed first. Social media filled with images of empty pumps, out-of-fuel signs, and long lines. While some shortages were brief, the psychological impact was immediate. Fuel scarcity, even when localized, triggers anxiety. Gasoline is not just another product, it is mobility, work, and security for millions of Americans. Behind the scenes, energy companies scrambled to rebalance flows. Trucks were rerouted. Inventories were tapped. Imports from other regions were increased where possible. But the system has limits, and those limits were tested. Canada's role in the U.S. energy system is often underestimated. It supplies more oil to the United States than any other country by a wide margin. This oil feeds refineries that produce gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and heating oil. Disruptions at the source cascade downstream. The idea of retaliation was not about turning off the taps overnight. It was about leverage. Canada's energy exports give it influence, particularly when disputes arise. Even signaling the possibility of restrictions can move markets. Traders respond to risk, not just reality. As uncertainty grew, prices reacted, and supply chains tightened. Officials on both sides moved quickly to calm the situation publicly. Statements emphasized that energy trade remained strong and that no formal embargo existed. But markets listen to actions as much as words. Inspections, approvals, and logistical decisions all affect flow, even without dramatic announcements. The shortages expose vulnerabilities. Many U.S. states depend on just-in-time fuel delivery. Storage tanks at stations are designed for efficiency, not resilience. When deliveries are delayed by even a day or two, outages occur. The system works smoothly under normal conditions but offers little buffer during disruption. Energy experts pointed out that this was not a total supply collapse, but a distribution shock. Fuel existed in the system, but it was not always where it was needed at the right time. That distinction mattered little to drivers facing empty pumps. The political dimension intensified the story. Some U.S. officials criticized Canada for weaponizing energy. Others acknowledged that the situation highlighted America's own dependency and infrastructure fragility. Calls resurfaced for increased domestic production, expanded refining capacity, and diversified supply routes. In Canada, the narrative was different. Canadian leaders framed their actions as defensive, not aggressive. They emphasized sovereignty, fairness, and the right to respond to policies that harmed Canadian interests. Energy exports, they argued, had long benefited both countries, but cooperation required mutual respect. Public opinion in Canada was divided. Some supported a firm stance, viewing energy leverage as one of the few tools Canada has in disputes with its larger neighbor. Others worried that escalating tensions could backfire, damaging a relationship that underpins Canada's economy. Meanwhile, markets adjusted. Fuel prices rose in affected states, sometimes sharply. Elsewhere, the impact was muted. This uneven effect underscored the regional nature of energy systems. What happens in one part of the country can feel invisible in another, even when the underlying cause is national or international. The federal government monitored the situation closely. Strategic reserves were discussed, though they are designed for major supply disruptions, not short-term regional shortages. Energy regulators worked with industry to smooth flows and prevent panic buying. Panic, however, is difficult to control. Once consumers believe fuel may be scarce, behavior changes. People top off tanks more frequently. This increases demand artificially, worsening shortages. The perception of scarcity can be as powerful as scarcity itself. The episode revealed how quickly energy issues become political flashpoints. Gas prices and availability affect voters directly. Even short disruptions draw intense media coverage. The narrative of 5 states going dry spread rapidly, fueled by images and headlines that traveled faster than context. In reality, most outages were temporary, but temporary did not mean insignificant. The incident reopened long-standing debates about North American energy integration. The United States and Canada built their systems assuming stable relations. Pipelines cross borders. Refineries depend on foreign crude. Policies are interlinked. When political friction enters the equation, that integration becomes a source of vulnerability as well as strength. Energy security is not just about supply volume. It is about flexibility, redundancy, and trust. Trust was strained. While officials worked to de-escalate, analysts warned that similar episodes could recur as global energy markets tighten and geopolitics grow more volatile. Climate policy, trade disputes, and shifting alliances all add layers of uncertainty. The world is in an energy transition, but oil remains essential. Electric vehicles and renewables are growing, yet gasoline and diesel still power most transportation. Until alternatives are fully scaled, disruptions to oil supply will continue to have outsized effects. The Canada-US relationship has weathered many storms. Energy disputes are not new. What made this moment different was its visibility. Social media turned localized shortages into national news within hours. The speed of information amplified the impact. For drivers in the affected states, the lesson was immediate. Dependence on complex supply chains carries risk. For policymakers, the message was strategic. Energy interdependence requires careful management, especially during political conflict. The situation gradually stabilized. Fuel deliveries resumed, prices eased, stations replenished tanks. The crisis passed without lasting damage, but it left behind questions that did not disappear with the headlines. How resilient is the U.S. fuel system? How much leverage does Canada hold through energy exports? And how should two deeply connected countries manage disputes without putting consumers in the crossfire? The oil retaliation episode did not rewrite energy policy overnight, but it served as a warning shot. In a tightly coupled system, even small shifts can have visible consequences. Energy is power, and when that power is tested, the effects are felt far beyond boardrooms and government offices, at the gas station, on the commute, and in the daily rhythm of life. The pumps eventually flowed again, but the message lingered. North America's energy security is shared, fragile, and increasingly political. And in a world of rising tension, no supply chain should be taken for granted. Thanks for watching Alert 360 News, where real stories meet real impact. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the fastest growing news community on YouTube.